My name is Evelyn Hart. 3 months ago, I took a 12-hour flight to attend my grandfather's 80th birthday celebration. I thought I was going home to celebrate the one person in my family who had always believed in me. Instead, my mother humiliated me in front of more than 900 guests. She looked directly at me and said, "You weren't invited." A few minutes later, security escorted me out of the ballroom. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just walked away. That night, sitting alone in my hotel room, I finally accepted something I had spent years trying to ignore. My family never feared losing me because they never believed they could. They thought I would always come back, always forgive them, always be there whenever they needed me. 5 days later, I woke up, picked up my phone, and froze. The screen was flooded with hundreds of missed calls. My mother, my sister, my uncles, my aunts, even relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years were suddenly trying to reach me. At first, I thought something terrible had happened. Maybe my grandfather was sick. Maybe there had been an accident. Maybe someone in the family was in trouble. Then I listened to a voicemail from my mother. She was crying, really crying, and then she said something that made my stomach drop. "Evelyn, please answer the phone. We need you." We need you? 5 days earlier, they had treated me like I didn't belong in the family. 5 days earlier, they had watched me walk out of that ballroom completely alone. And now they needed me? I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew something had happened. Something big. Something my family never expected. 5 days earlier, they had thrown me away like I meant nothing. 5 days later, they were begging me to come back. What they didn't know was that my grandfather had been keeping a secret for years, and that secret was about to change everything. If you enjoy family drama stories, family betrayal stories, emotional revenge, and Reddit family drama, subscribe to Air Nova and stay with me, because what happened next was something none of us saw coming. Getting thrown out of my grandfather's birthday celebration wasn't the most painful part. The most painful part was realizing that it shouldn't have surprised me at all, because my family had seen me this way for years. Like I didn't matter. I grew up in Seattle. Our family was my mother, my father, my younger sister Chloe, and me. If you asked anyone who the family's favorite was, the answer was always the same: Chloe. Chloe was everyone's darling. Chloe was everyone's pride. And me? I was the one everyone remembered whenever they needed something. If Chloe made a mistake, I fixed it. If Chloe forgot something, I handled it. If Chloe ran into trouble, everyone expected me to help. And whenever I tried to complain, my mother always said the same thing: "Evelyn, be the bigger person." As a kid, I used to think maybe my mother trusted me more, but now I understand. I was just the person it was easiest to give up on. There was only one person in my family who truly saw me: my grandfather, Richard Hart. He never compared me to Chloe. He asked about my studies. He listened to me carefully. He even remembered the smallest things. When I was 16, I worked for 2 weeks organizing a charity event for our family business. Every day after school, I worked. Made calls, handled paperwork, put together the guest list. After the event ended, everyone congratulated Chloe, because she had gone up on stage and given a 5-minute speech. No one even mentioned my name. No one. Except my grandfather. That night, he called me aside. Then he placed a small box in my hand and said, "One day you'll understand your own worth, even if others never do." At the time, I didn't fully understand what that meant, but today, I understand. My grandfather had seen something long before I was willing to see it myself. He understood that this family didn't love me because I was their favorite. They valued me because I was useful to them, and very soon, I would start to understand that truth myself. Looking back, I understand that I had a specific role in my family. I was the one who was supposed to fix everything. I was 17 at the time. I worked at a small coffee shop after school. I didn't earn much, but it was enough to cover my own expenses. And honestly, I was saving that money with a dream of going to college. But in our house, nothing stayed just mine for very long. One day, Chloe came home crying. She had booked a trip with her friends, but found out at the last minute that she didn't have enough money in her account. I thought this time my mother would at least tell her to take responsibility for her own mistake. Instead, my mother looked at me. "Evelyn, can you give her some of your savings?" I still remember, I stayed silent for a few seconds, because that money I had saved up over months. But then my mother said that familiar line, "Your sister needs you right now." I felt bad saying no, so I gave her the money. Chloe hugged me happily. My mother smiled. Everyone went back to normal. Except for one thing. No one thanked me. No one even asked how much that money had meant to me. At the time, I didn't think much about it. I told myself, this is just what family does. This is what you're supposed to do for family. But a few weeks later, something happened that forced me to see things differently. I received an academic award from school. For the first time in my life, I was genuinely proud of something. That night at the dinner table, I sat there with my certificate. I thought everyone would be happy, but the entire dinner, the conversation was about Chloe, her new friends, her new plans, her future. No one even glanced at my certificate until dinner was almost over. That night, sitting alone in my room, I asked myself a question for the first time. If I ever stopped helping, would anyone miss me, or would they only miss what I did for them? That night, I couldn't sleep. The same question kept circling in my mind. If I ever stopped helping, would anyone miss me, or would they only miss what I did for them? I didn't know the answer yet, but my grandfather might have. My relationship with my grandfather was different from everyone else in the family. He never asked me for anything. He never saw me as the solution to a problem. He just talked to me. Honestly, there were times I felt he was the only person who truly understood me. Every Sunday afternoon, I would go to his house. We'd sit together on the porch and drink coffee. He would tell me stories from his own life, and I would tell him about my week. One day, he suddenly asked me, "Are you happy, Evelyn?" The question caught me off guard, because it had been years since anyone had asked me something like that. I laughed and said, "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" My grandfather stayed quiet for a moment, looking at me. Then slowly, he nodded. "You're just like your father." I didn't understand what he meant, so I asked. My grandfather smiled faintly and said, "Your father always put others first. He thought of himself last." At the time, hearing that actually made me feel good. Today, I understand he was trying to warn me. Before I left that day, my grandfather showed me an old photograph. It was me and him in the picture, both of us laughing. He placed it in my hand and said, "Keep this. One day you'll understand its worth." I laughed and said, "Grandpa, why do you say things like that?" He didn't answer directly. He just looked out the window and said, "Because some people realize far too late who was truly standing beside them." At the time, I thought maybe he was just getting sentimental with age. But on the way home, I had a strange feeling. It felt like my grandfather knew something I didn't, and years later, when everything fell apart, I would understand that what he gave me that day was a sign that was about to change our entire family. Months passed after that conversation with my grandfather. Life went back to how it was before. I worked, I handled things at home, and little by little, I kept pushing my own dreams further back. Honestly, by that point I was so used to it that I didn't even question it anymore. Then one day, everything changed. That afternoon, coming home from work, I found an envelope in my mailbox. My name was written on it. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was my grandfather's. I stood right there by my car and opened it. Inside was a beautiful invitation. An invitation to my grandfather's 80th birthday celebration. The event would be held at a large hotel in Miami. Family, friends, business partners, hundreds of guests in total. And the most surprising part was a small note handwritten by my grandfather at the bottom of the invitation. "Evelyn, you must come. I have something important to tell you." I read that line over and over. Something important? What could it be? I didn't know. But my grandfather's words wouldn't leave my mind. That night, for the first time in a long while, I was genuinely excited. Over the next few weeks, I budgeted, requested time off, and booked my flight. The ticket wasn't cheap. A large part of my savings went into it. But I had no regrets. Because this wasn't just a birthday celebration. It was for my grandfather. The one person who had always stood by me. As the days passed, my anticipation only grew. But one thing felt strange to me. Through all of it, my mother never once brought up the event with me. Neither did Chloe. I thought everyone was just busy. Today, I understand that wasn't it. A week before the event, I called my mother and said, "I'll see you in Miami." There were a few seconds of silence on the other end of the line. Then my mother simply said, "Yes, I'll see you there." There was something in her voice I couldn't quite place. I didn't think much of it at the time. But I've thought about that moment many times since, because if I had understood the meaning of that silence that day, I might never have gotten on that flight, and I might never have had to endure the greatest humiliation of my life in front of 900 people. Even today, I can remember every moment of that day. After a long 12-hour journey, I arrived in Miami. I checked into the hotel and rested for a while. Then I got ready for the event, taking great care with everything. Honestly, I was excited. I would be seeing my whole family after a long time. And most importantly, I would see my grandfather. When I arrived at the hotel's massive ballroom that evening, the place was nearly full. Lights all around, music, laughter, and a crowd of guests. Everything was so beautiful that for a moment, I thought maybe I had been worrying over nothing. Then I saw my mother. She was talking with a few guests. I walked toward her, smiling. "Hi, Mom." She turned around at my voice, but there was no smile on her face. No joy either. Instead, she looked at me as if I wasn't supposed to be there. "What are you doing here?" she said in a cold voice. I thought she was joking. "What do you mean?" "Grandpa invited me." But her expression didn't change. If anything, it hardened further. Then she said something that silenced the entire ballroom. "No one invited you, Evelyn." I stared at her, stunned. That's when I realized people around us had started looking our way. Right then, Chloe stepped forward, annoyance written across her face. "You shouldn't have come here," she said. Something inside my chest grew heavier and heavier. I tried to say something, but my mother didn't even give me the chance. She gestured toward 2 security guards standing nearby. "Take her outside." For a few seconds, I couldn't even believe it. In front of 900 people, in front of my own family, I was being thrown out. And the most painful part was, my grandfather still didn't know any of this was happening. I looked around one last time. No one said a word. No one stood beside me. Then I walked out of the ballroom in silence. But I didn't know yet that just 5 days after this humiliation, that same family would be desperately searching for me. And the reason was something no one in that ballroom could have ever imagined that day. After walking out of the ballroom, I stood outside the hotel for a long time. The warm Miami air moved around me. People were laughing, taking pictures, going about their evening. And me? I just stood there, a small bag in my hand, the same question circling in my head over and over. Did this really just happen? Did my mother really just humiliate me in front of 900 people? A few minutes later, I went back to my hotel room. That night, I didn't talk to anyone. I left my phone lying beside the bed. At one point, I thought maybe my mother would call. Maybe she'd say it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe Chloe would text. Maybe someone in the family would at least want to know if I was okay. But nothing happened. The night passed. Then morning came. Then another day. My phone stayed silent. Looking back now, I understand that silence hurt more than anything, more than the humiliation itself. Because humiliation lasts a few minutes. But when no one even checks on you, that's when you truly understand how much you're worth to them. On the afternoon of the second day, I was sitting in the hotel lobby. A large television there was showing coverage of my grandfather's birthday celebration. Local media had covered the event. On camera, I saw my family. My mother laughing. Chloe laughing. Everyone enjoying themselves. As if nothing had happened. As if I had never even been there. That day, I made a decision. I wouldn't call anyone anymore. I wouldn't wait for an explanation from anyone. I wouldn't wait for their approval anymore. The next morning, I had a flight back to Seattle. I thought that if I left Miami behind, maybe I could leave everything else behind too. But I was wrong. Because that very night, something happened that was about to change my entire family's life. And 5 days later, when I would wake up and pick up my phone, I would understand why everyone had suddenly become desperate to find me. But I still didn't know it yet, that my grandfather had left something behind for me, something no one ever could have expected. After returning to Seattle, I buried myself in work. Honestly, there wasn't much else I could do. The busier I stayed, the less I thought about that night, about being humiliated in front of 900 people, about hearing my own mother say the words, "No one invited you." But the memories kept coming back, especially at night, when everything around me went quiet. 5 days passed, a full 5 days. During that time, no one in my family reached out to me. So when I woke up on the 6th morning to hundreds of missed calls, I was stunned. At first, I didn't answer. Honestly, I didn't even want to. But a little while later, a call came in from an unknown number. I thought it might be something work-related, so I picked up. A man's voice came through on the other end. "Am I speaking with Miss Evelyn Hart?" "Yes." After a few seconds of silence, he said, "My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm your grandfather's attorney." My chest tightened. Attorney? My grandfather's? Before I could say anything, he continued, "I'm sorry, but your grandfather passed away 3 days ago." My hands started shaking. Even hearing the words, I couldn't quite believe them. Just days ago, he had been alive. And now he was gone. For a moment, I couldn't speak at all. Then the attorney said, "Mr. Hart specifically named you in his will. You need to come to Miami as soon as possible." I was stunned. Because in my grandfather's large family, I wasn't the only one. So why was I specifically being asked to come? I asked him exactly that, but he didn't give me a direct answer. He simply said, "Everything will be explained in person." After the call ended, I sat there holding my phone for a long time. Right then, it started ringing again. My mother, then Chloe, then my mother again, then more relatives. Suddenly, everyone was looking for me. Suddenly, everyone wanted me back in Miami. And for the first time, it occurred to me, this wasn't just about my grandfather's death. There was something more behind it, and my family already knew what it was, but they weren't telling me. That afternoon, I booked my flight to Miami. Because there was one thing I needed to find out. What exactly had my grandfather left behind that had made my family this desperate? 2 days later, I flew back to Miami. Honestly, I had no desire to go back. Just a week earlier, in that very city, my own family had humiliated me and thrown me out. But I went for my grandfather. Because if there was one person in this world I owed something to, it was him. The attorney's office was on the 10th floor of a large building in the middle of the city. When I arrived, I saw that almost the entire family was already there. My mother, Chloe, my uncles and aunts, my cousins, everyone. The moment I walked in, a strange silence fell over the room. Some people wouldn't even look at me. Others looked at me as if I were the cause of some problem. Right then, I understood. They already knew something, and I didn't. A few minutes later, the attorney, Daniel Brooks, walked in. He was carrying several files and a sealed envelope. He began by reading out some of the general provisions of my grandfather's will. Some money for family members, some property, some donations. Everything seemed normal. Then he paused. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. He picked up the sealed envelope from the table and said, "This is a personal letter from Mr. Richard Hart." He specifically instructed that it be read only in the presence of Evelyn Hart. I was stunned, and looking at my family's faces, it was clear they had already known this was coming. The attorney opened the envelope and began to read. "Dear Evelyn, if you're reading this letter, it means I'm no longer with you. I've made many mistakes in my life, but there's one thing I never got wrong. I always knew who you were. I watched you help everyone, year after year, while receiving so little in return." My eyes started to blur. The room was silent. Only the attorney's voice could be heard. Then he read the next line, and in that moment, I understood why my family had been so panicked, why they had suddenly been searching for me, why there had been hundreds of phone calls. Because in his final wishes, my grandfather had left behind a condition, one that meant my family would receive nothing they were owed unless it was fulfilled. And at the center of that condition was me, alone. After the attorney stopped reading the letter, the entire room fell silent. I looked around. My mother's face had gone pale. Chloe sat there with her head down, and for the first time, it hit me. These people had known something for a long time. Daniel Brooks cleared his throat and continued. "Mr. Hart has established a family foundation with a significant portion of his estate." Everyone in the room listened closely. However, before the foundation can become active, a certain condition must be met. My chest was pounding. Then he opened another page in the file. "Miss Evelyn Hart's approval is mandatory. As chairperson of the foundation, no portion of the property, funds, or business shares can be transferred without her written consent." It felt like all the air had suddenly left the room. That's when everything started making sense to me. This was why they had been calling. This was why everyone had suddenly been searching for me. Because they weren't missing me. They needed me. They needed my signature. They needed my presence. And the most painful part was, they had known this while I was sitting alone in that hotel room, crying. They knew. And still, no one called. No one apologized. No one admitted they had been wrong. Just then, the attorney pulled out another letter. It was a final note, handwritten by my grandfather. In it, he had written, "I'm leaving my family one last lesson." For years, they depended on Evelyn, but never once tried to understand her worth. If they want anything, they'll first need to learn to respect her. Tears filled my eyes. Because my grandfather had seen the truth. He had always seen it. I slowly lifted my head and looked at my mother. For the first time, she couldn't meet my eyes. And that's when I understood. The humiliation that had begun in that ballroom 5 days earlier hadn't really been about hatred. The real reason was that they never imagined a day would come when they would need me. But now, everything had changed. And for the first time, the decision wasn't in their hands. The decision was mine. Everyone in the room waited for my answer. Just days earlier, these same people had treated me as if I weren't even part of the family. And today they were all looking at me. Because for the first time, they needed something only I could give. Honestly, I had every right to be angry. I could have gotten up and walked away. I could have given them the same pain they had given me. But my grandfather never raised me to be that person. After a long silence, I looked at my mother. I had seen her cry many times in my life, but never like this. That day, she broke down completely. "I was wrong," she said slowly. "So terribly wrong." No one in the room spoke. Wiping her tears, my mother continued, "I always thought you were strong. I thought you could handle everything. So I kept taking and taking from you. And somewhere along the way, I never realized I was losing you." My younger sister Chloe sat there too, head bowed. For the first time, she had no excuse, no explanation, just silence, and that silence said everything. Looking back now, I understand that the most important thing that day wasn't my grandfather's money, the foundation, or the business. The most important thing was that the truth had finally come out into the open, and no one could deny it anymore. In the end, I decided to honor my grandfather's final wish, not for revenge, but because he believed his family deserved a chance to learn. But one thing had changed in me. I was no longer living for their approval. I was no longer the girl who would lose herself trying to make everyone else happy. My grandfather's greatest gift to me wasn't any wealth. It was showing me the truth, that my worth had never depended on anyone else's recognition. And that day, after so many years, I finally felt truly free for the first time. Because at last, I understood something. The people who had abandoned me, they were my family. But the person who had finally found herself, that was me. Looking back, there's one thing I've come to understand. Sometimes, the greatest loss belongs to the very people who take too long to realize your worth. For years, I believed that if I just helped more, sacrificed more, and tried harder, one day my family would finally see me. One day, they would understand everything I had done for them. But the truth turned out to be something else entirely. Some people only recognize your value the moment they're faced with the fear of losing you. My grandfather left me something far greater than money or property. He taught me to understand my own worth. He taught me that self-respect should never depend on anyone else's approval. And today, so many years later, I know he was right. Because peace doesn't come when everyone finally acknowledges you. Peace comes when you learn to recognize your own worth on your own. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you give your family another chance? Or would you walk away for good? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy family drama stories, family betrayal stories, emotional revenge, Reddit family drama, and real-life family stories like this one, stay with Air Nova. See you in the next story.